Tonight, WWE presents another episode of Monday Night Raw. It's the final episode of Monday Night Raw before WrestleMania 37 nights 1 and 2 this coming Saturday and Sunday. So it's a big episode, despite the build to WrestleMania, especially from the Monday Night Raw side of things, being pretty horrendous. It's going to be a very exciting show, isn't it? And of course, the main match, as you can see right there, is Drew McIntyre facing off against King Corbin in the main event. Raw is going to be headlined, as I mentioned, by SmackDown's King Corbin facing Drew McIntyre as Corbin tries to injure McIntyre to get his WrestleMania 37 title shot from WWE Champion Bobby Lashley. Now, obviously, there's a ton of other stuff, as I mentioned, that is already been announced for tonight's show, so we will get into that as well. I do want to talk about this match, though, and just the build, frankly, from the Raw side of things. I've mentioned this a couple of times here on the channel, so this is nothing new, this is no big revelation, but I look at this WrestleMania, I look at WrestleMania 37, and it just, to me, looks really similar to WrestleMania 31. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is WrestleMania 31, the build to that show, frankly, was awful. It was not good. It was not good. And there were so many reasons behind that. It was, the Roman Reigns being forced down the throats and just the fans turning on it. Because obviously WrestleMania season, you look back on so much stuff and you look at that WrestleMania 31, it was just chaos. It really was chaos. I mean, we're being told by WWE, like this guy, like Roman Reigns, he's the guy, you have to like him, and the WWE universe and the fans watching around the world go, no, no, stop telling us to who we have to like and stop forcing it down our throats. And he wins the Royal Rumble and fans are just furious, they're booing him out of the building, they're booing The Rock, they're threatening to cancel the WWE Network, boycott WrestleMania. I mean, it was insanity. And then on top of that, just all the other stuff just wasn't built right, whether it's Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, whether it was Bray Wyatt versus The Undertaker. Credit to Bray Wyatt, he built a WrestleMania storyline on his own without The Undertaker being there. You also had John Cena Rusev, which could have been built better. It was such an archaic 1980s storyline. You had Triple H versus Sting as well, that for a period of time was very exciting. And the whole Sting being in WWE and Sting being a vigilante kind of figure towards the authority. I thought that was really interesting. And then the last few minutes, they suddenly decided, no, we're going to make this WWE versus WCW. And everyone went, why? Why? Well, of course, I later found out WrestleMania why, because they wanted to have those cameos from DX and the NWO. But despite the terrible build, WrestleMania 31 really was one of the better WrestleManias in recent histories. It was excellent. It really was excellent. The matches on the show were fantastic. The ending, obviously, is what it's best remembered for. Seth Rollins and the heist of the century. So, despite the build to this WrestleMania not being very good, and that's on both sides of WWE, that's on Raw and SmackDown, but especially on Raw, I do look at the card for both nights and I look at the matches and I say, well, those matches on paper are very good matches. And if you want to judge a WrestleMania on quality of matches, there's a lot of matches there that I look at and I say, you know what, there's some really good matches there. So I think both nights are going to be excellent. I just wish, I'm excited. You're excited for WrestleMania just because it's WrestleMania. But I just wish that going into Saturday and Sunday shows, I was excited because the build had been so good. I feel like we could be so much more hyped, especially considering live fans are back and all that kind of stuff. It just feels like we're excited for WrestleMania because it's WrestleMania and there are fans in attendance. We should be more excited for the matches because the matches on the card actually are really promising. But WWE haven't really pushed us in that direction. So obviously the main event of tonight's show of Monday Night Raw, as I mentioned, is Drew McIntyre versus King Corbin. In terms of a go-home main event for WrestleMania, I mean, it doesn't scream it. I mean, I'm old enough that I remember the go-home main events for WrestleManias in the past. I remember the go-home segment for WrestleMania 17 was the Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon signing up the contract. I remember the go-home match for WrestleMania 18, the go-home main event match for Monday Night Raw for WrestleMania 18 in 2002. Get this, was none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock teaming up to face all three members of the NWO. That's Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash. That was a main event for a go-home episode of Monday Night Raw for WrestleMania. That is a WrestleMania go-home main event. That is world class, that is. Now, obviously, I think it's almost unfair to compare, Drew McIntyre and King Corbin to that, but it doesn't scream, get excited, tune in, because we're going to see something great on the Raw before WrestleMania. It's almost just like WWE have gone, WrestleMania, be excited about that. We'll get through Raw. will get through Raw. And as far as I'm aware, I think this Raw has been taped anyway. This was taped at Tropicana Field because they had to get out by Friday, obviously with the Major League Baseball season starting, or baseball season starting, so they had to get out of there. So this Raw was taped last week, actually, so we're not even going to be live this week, which of course is a rarity, especially, well, it's very rare nowadays going into WrestleMania, but you know, these are the times that we're living in at the moment, unfortunately, with the pandemic. When it comes to McIntyre versus Corbin, look, what I don't get is, and I've said this time and time again, I don't understand this. The Drew McIntyre, King Corbin, or Baron Corbin at the time, and Bobby Lashley's stable was in 2018. It was in 2018, if you're not familiar, if you've just started watching WWE in the last 18 months or so. It was a stable that was going on in 2018 on Monday Night Raw, and eventually I think they feuded with the Shield going into Fastlane in 2019. That was their little faction, right? And this was during a time in 2018 on Monday Night Raw where Monday Night Raw and WWE programming was awful. I mean, honestly, it was so bad. And that's not me being one of those people that, I love to bash WWE and I want to criticize, the programming, it was so much better in the Attitude Era. That's not my deal. That's not my thing. But the programming was so bad, and I wasn't the only one. The fans thought that, and so did the WWE officials. So much so that you had that infamous episode of Monday Night Raw where Vince McMahon comes out, and then Shane McMahon comes out, then Stephanie McMahon comes out, then Triple H come out. They all come out. Stephanie McMahon takes the microphone and she apologizes. She apologizes to the crowd in attendance. She apologizes to the metaphorical WWE universe around the world, and she says, quote, "We haven't been doing a very good job lately." That's my Stephanie McMahon impression. "We haven't been doing a very good job lately," and then basically says, "Look, our programming sucks. The TV show Raw is terrible." And Triple H then tries to hype up the crowd and say, "You're the authority now. You're the authority. It's none of us. We're not the authority anymore. You are the authority." And they promised such a better show. Now, obviously, it's incredibly debatable as to if they delivered a better show. But my point being, my long-winded point there, is that why on earth would you reference a faction from 2018, which you even yourselves admitted was a low point for Monday Night Raw? You yourselves admitted that the show was terrible, and now, 3 years later, you're saying to everyone, remember that terrible Raw? Remember this faction? WrestleMania season, it's our biggest show of the year. Let's remind them of that. Why on earth would you go back to that? Why would you do that? That's like WrestleMania season, and one of your biggest angles is Kane and Triple H feuding again because they want to do Katie Vick Volume 2. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just stupid. Why would you reference that? Why would you reference something that is so bad? That was so bad that not only was it creatively bad, but also it wasn't drawing anything in the ratings. They were doing record lows at the time. That's why the McMahon showed up on Raw that week, because the fans had tuned out because they went, this is boring. And now the people, like there's been a demand of, I tell you what, I really want them to revisit that Corbin, McIntyre and Lashley stable. That did not get enough airtime. No, it was bad. So I don't understand, I really don't understand this sort of insistence of going back to that during your WrestleMania build. It just seems very odd. And to be honest, when it comes to Corbin, I know Corbin really divides people on social media, whether they think he's boring or anything like that. I think, frankly, he's just doing the best of what he's given. The King of the Ring gimmick is beyond outdated. It really is beyond outdated. And again, that's not his fault. The idea that, I mean, he's been King of the Ring at this point. He won it in 2019. He won it nearly 2 years ago. And he's still walking around like he's the king. Talk about no character evolution or development at all. He is beyond stale, and he was using a stale gimmick anyway. So I don't know what staler than stale. Mold, maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. And I sympathise for him, because the idea that now in 2021 or even 2019 when it happened, you win the King of the Ring and suddenly you have to wear a crown and you walk around with a scepter and you have a cape is ludicrous. It's stupid. It's outdated. It was outdated then, let alone 2 years later. So I sympathise for him because he has to make the best of what he's given. Drew McIntyre, I would assume he will retain tonight, because why on earth would King Corbin beat him going into WrestleMania? I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. I don't know. I think people have kicked out of the End of Days at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if McIntyre kicked out of it just to try and, raise the stakes for his match against Lashley. Wouldn't be stunned by that in the slightest. Now, speaking of Bobby Lashley as well, he will be facing Cedric Alexander in an untitled match on Raw. Of course, he defeated Shelton Benjamin last week. It's just a shame, isn't it? It's a really shame. It's a real big shame that the Hurt Business is splitting up. I've done a couple of videos on it at this point, and I don't want to sort of beat a dead horse when it comes to it, but it sucks. I mean, obviously, they were one of the better things on Monday Night Raw, which is few and far between, and the idea that they should have been split up at this point is ludicrous. There was still so much more story to tell. I mean, well, so much more story to tell. It's ridiculous, really. And the idea that they've had their day is stupid. I just hope that it's a swerve and maybe they help Lashley retain at WrestleMania. I mean, I'm clutching at straws there. I understand that, but let's hope. Raw also tonight will see WrestleMania opponents team up. How will they stay on the same page? I'm sure they'll say. As Rhea Ripley and Raw Women's Champion Asuka face the Women's Tag Team Champions Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. Is that all Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler do at this point, by the way? That's another thing I want to talk about. Is that all they do? They just face WrestleMania opponents. And then, because we've seen this for like a month at this point with Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, and to be honest, that's tainted what was really going to be a match I was excited for. I'm still excited for it anyway, but the build for that one's been horrific as well, and that's just because their insistence on centering the SmackDown Women's Championship feud, your biggest feud in your women's division on SmackDown, which is your biggest show in WWE right now, is centered around a man, Reginald, who's not even a wrestler. I mean, it's just that kind of idiotic booking, because he's got character, he's got charisma. You know what I mean? You watch these programs, that's what you do. You go, that's the frustration. If you weren't so dedicated to watching pro wrestling, you honestly, if I was a casual fan, which of course I'm not, but if I was a casual fan, I would have switched off a long time ago. I really would have, because some of these things like that, and it's just, again, just what goes on in these creative meetings, honestly, what goes on in these creative meetings, they must look at this and go, wait a minute, you know the thing we've been doing on SmackDown with Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks, they've been facing Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, and you have someone there going, go on, yeah? We haven't done that on Raw, have we? Write it down. That's Monday. We're doing that on Monday. It's just stupid. So other matches we have on tonight's show, we have AJ Styles versus Raw Tag Team Champion Xavier Woods as the head of the Tag Team Championship match at WrestleMania. I'm excited for that one. I am excited for that match at WrestleMania. Really interested to see Omos, see how well he does. I think talk about things that they've done badly. I think the way they've booked him, I think, really well. So that's exciting. And as I mentioned, it's the final build to WrestleMania 37. So it's going to be some interesting stuff. No, we'll have to wait and see. My hopes aren't very high. I'm just excited that it's WrestleMania season, it's WrestleMania week. I don't expect Raw to get suddenly amazing tonight, because there is nothing in the course of the last a really long time that's made me think that it would get good. To be honest, Raw since... I'm trying to remember the last time I watched Raw and I went, that was really, really good. And honestly, I'm coming up with a bit of a blank, which is really concerning. It's really scary. Nevertheless, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Drew McIntyre versus King Corbin, as well as the final Monday Night Raw before WrestleMania this Saturday and Sunday? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.